Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about dissociation, why it happens, and what I do if a patient of mine is dissociating in session. Because it's been a really long time since I've made a video about this, and so many of you asked for this type of video on Instagram. But before I jump into that topic, I just wanted to remind everyone that unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic is still here, and it is still recommended that we wear face masks over our nose and our mouth when out in public, stay at least 6 feet away from others, wash our hands regularly, and avoid touching our faces. If we all do our part, we can stop the spread and protect those around us and ourselves from contracting the virus. And if wearing a mask is uncomfortable, something I became aware of recently is that you can purchase a mask bracket that holds the mask out from our mouth and nose just a little bit so that you don't breathe in your mask. I know this has been really hard. I know this is a very difficult time and we're all sick of hearing about it. But if we each try our best and do those things, we can slow the spread and save lives. Okay, now back into today's topic. Now, dissociation is when our brain and the rest of our nervous system feel overwhelmed and unable to deal with what's going on in the moment. And therefore, they pull us away. Wah! Right? I've always talked about dissociation as our brain pulling the ripcord on reality because it's just too much for us to manage. And when it comes to the DSM, they call any dissociation DPDR, or depersonalization derealization disorder. Now, depersonalization is when we feel out of our body, like we're kind of watching ourselves from above or in a haze. And derealization is when we feel separated from our environment. So it can feel kind of like we're in a dream or like everything around us just isn't real. These experiences are really common. It's estimated that half of all adults have had at least one episode of DPDR. 50%! That is a lot of people. So know that you are not alone in having these symptoms. Now, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to call all of these symptoms collectively dissociation. Cool? And the reason that these dissociative symptoms happen is usually because of us being triggered. And I know the word triggered has been overused and therefore has lost some of its meaning and impact. But being triggered is when something in our environment reminds us of our past trauma. This could be a smell, a feeling, something we see, or really anything at all. And it usually involves our 5 senses. And if we don't have good grounding techniques or coping strategies, we can be triggered. And that can lead to us dissociating. Now remember, we dissociate because what we're experiencing right now is too much for our nervous system to handle. So it pulls us away until it's calm or safe enough to come back into our awareness. Dissociative symptoms can also be part of a PTSD diagnosis, and that stands for, if you don't know, post-traumatic stress disorder. However, not everyone with PTSD will have these symptoms, and I just wanted you to know that it can fall under that diagnosis as well. Overall, we don't know exactly why dissociation happens to some and not others, but we do know that it's connected to a traumatic experience or experiences. And do you remember the little T's and big T's that my friend and colleague Dr. Alexa Altman talked about? Well, if not, she shared that not all traumas are these big, horrific events. They can also be a bunch of smaller upsets that slowly overwhelm our system and give us the same traumatic response as one big trauma could. Now, these small things are like moving, having an emergency surgery, going through a divorce, or losing a job. And big T's could be things like being abused as a child, being in a really bad car accident, going to war, or being assaulted. Whether we have big or little T's, it doesn't matter. Not one is worse or better than the other. They can all lead to PTSD symptoms and possibly dissociation. And in all honesty, as I was researching for my new book, I found that our ability to be traumatized doesn't have as much to do with what happens to us. Rather, it leans on our ability to deal with it and to know that we're going to be okay. Meaning our level of resiliency plays a huge role in whether or not we experience symptoms of PTSD or dissociation as a result of being in a threatening and traumatizing situation. And also, I just want to briefly mention that I believe dissociation happens on a spectrum. Some people have periods of spacing out or not remembering how a stressful event went. I've had that experience. While others have had so much trauma and upset that they break their personality into multiple alters to cope and survive. And that's what's called dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And there is everything in between those two experiences. I have patients who struggle with maladaptive daydreaming, which is when we create a daydream that runs pretty parallel to our regular life, but without any of the upsets, and we can prefer to spend time in that space rather than our own reality. There are so many ways that dissociative symptoms can affect us. So if you find yourself having memory loss, or think that you're struggling with some of the symptoms I've mentioned, please reach out to a professional so that you can get a proper assessment and treatment. Okay, so that is why dissociation happens. But many of you wanted to know what I do if a patient of mine dissociates in session. And the first thing I want to talk about with this is that in order for me to know what to do, I have to have a conversation with my patients first. Meaning that if in our first few sessions together you tell me that you struggle with dissociation, or perhaps I see it happen, when you are okay and present, we're gonna have to talk about it. I'm going to want to know how often this is happening, how long it's been going on, and if you know any specific things that trigger it, or if you have any tools that have helped to bring you back. We'll work together to build on what you already know. And one of the goals I will add to your treatment plan will be to build up your resiliency. I will also ask you if touch helps, if you want me to touch your arm or back when you're dissociated, or if there are certain things that I can say, or if you would prefer for me to be quiet and to just stay where I am. This all helps us better be prepared for when and if it happens again. In a way, we learn together how to best manage it, because if we're doing the hard work in therapy, like we should all be doing in therapy, there are going to be times when we just get overwhelmed. And I want to make sure that we have tools in place to help bring you back safely and quickly. And I also want to build you up so that these dissociative symptoms happen less and less. And these can be things like taking care of your basic needs as homework. You know, that good old HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Making sure we're showering regularly and just all sorts of stuff like that. Next, I want to challenge that negative self-talk. You knew this was coming, because we all know how much our trauma loves to pull us into a shame spiral, telling us there's something innately wrong with us when in fact there isn't. And finally, I will want you to build up your support system. Having people that we can count on and talk about the real things can make all the difference. And I want you to have the resources and support that you need when you need it most. Oh, and I also keep things in my office to help, whether that's something like thinking putty, which is like silly putty but much better, or a roller ball filled with spearmint essential oils, or it could be a weighted blanket, or really whatever helps you stay present and not let dissociation pull you away. I've had patients bring in all sorts of things over the years, so if you find something that works, let your therapist know and ask if you can either leave something there in their office, or they may offer to get one and keep it in the office themselves. Overall, know that dissociation is common, and it can happen with more frequency as we work through any past traumatic experience. Just be honest with your therapist about it. Work to build up your resources, and know that we can get it to go away for good. Now I know some of you love to be dissociated and even prefer it to regular life. And I know it feels safer and better there, but trust me when I tell you that not feeling connected to our world or body isn't any way to live. Not to mention that forming memories when we're dissociated is really difficult, if not impossible. Therefore, even if it's more comfortable now, we do have to find a way for us to come back to reality and feel safe. And know that you can be present in your body and feel good. Trust me, just getting the right therapeutic support and working to heal the wounds caused by our trauma experiences will make the urge to dissociate go away, because you will be happy and healthy being present in your body and in the world around you. I promise it does get better. Well, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.